Good evening and Happy New Year. You're tuned in to our 10 p.m. newscast from the Arirang News Center in Seoul. Great to have you with us. I'm Scott Thompson. We begin with new hopes in the new year for an improvement in inter-Korean ties, responding to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech in which he posed the idea of inter-Korean talks in 2015. South Korea says it's willing and ready. Connie Lee has our top story.
Could an inter-Korean summit happen soon? That's what the South Korean government is hoping in light of the North Korean leader's latest speech.
We see North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's speech as sincere and significant. Our government is looking forward to any form of inter-Korean talks in the near future.
In Kim Jong-un's nationally televised New Year's speech, he said he's open to talks with Seoul, even possibly with President Park Geun-hye.
If the atmosphere and environment are there, there is no reason not to hold a high-level summit. We will make every effort to advance dialogue and cooperation.
As North Koreans ring in the new year, Kim used his third annual address to speak on different issues, but he spent the most time talking about improving ties with South Korea. Seoul is now urging Pyongyang to take steps to normalize relations, such as responding to its earlier proposal to hold talks this month. The North Korean leader, however, also criticized South Korea's military exercises with the U.S., calling them a source of tension. In addition to a possible meeting with South Korea, Kim also spoke about Pyongyang's plans to develop special economic and tourist zones in the new year. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye spent her first morning of 2015 visiting the Seoul National Cemetery. The visit came in what is now the 70th anniversary of South Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule. In a message she left inside a scrapbook at the cemetery, the president called for peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula in the new year. Earlier, in a message for South Korea's military, President Park called on troops to maintain their readiness. She said that strong security was a prerequisite for unification with North Korea. And on to some economic news. Despite the slowdown in global economic growth, Korea won the Triple Crown in trade last year. The nation topped the $1 trillion mark in trade volume for the fourth consecutive year, to go along with record highs in total exports and trade surplus. Our Kim Min-ji takes a closer look at the numbers.
2014 was another golden year for Korean trade, with new records being set in exports, trade volume, and trade surplus. According to the Trade Ministry, overall exports came to nearly $580 billion, which is up 2.4% from a year ago. Imports rose 2% to about $530 billion. Trade volume reached a record high and topped the $1 trillion mark for the fourth straight year, while the trade surplus also rose to a new record of nearly $50 billion. Exports to the U.S. rose the most at 13.4%, followed by the European Union and ASEAN member nations. But exports to China, Korea's largest trading partner, edged down slightly due to the increased competitiveness of local products. Shipments to Japan also slumped nearly 7% on the back of the weak yen. Meanwhile, the overall rise in exports was driven by semiconductors, with shipments climbing nearly 10% to about $63 billion. Exports of steel products, mobile phones, and shipping also saw steady rises. Shipments of petroleum-related goods, however, fell 3% due to slumping crude prices. As for 2015, the Trade Ministry expects another fruitful year, driven by the positive effects of the country's free trade agreements. Outbound shipments are forecast to jump nearly 4% on year to almost $600 billion. Imports are also expected to gain just over 3% to about $540 billion. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's finance minister says the recent slump in crude prices could end up benefiting the nation's economy by boosting domestic demand and industrial competitiveness. Speaking at Incheon Port on Thursday, Minister Chae Kyung-hwan said if oil prices fall 30%, each household would be able to save about $460 in expenses each year. Crude prices have been on a downward spiral in recent months due to oversupply. Chae added that domestic demand and exports will improve in 2015 as the global economy recovers. The minister also said that he would do his best to boost the economy and carry out structural reforms in the labor, finance, education, and public sectors. At midnight, at the very moment the calendar turned over to 2015 here in Korea, a number of changes went into effect. From higher cigarette prices and smoking bans to extra welfare benefits, our Ji Myung-gil has the rundown.
It isn't going to be a good start to the year for smokers in the nation, as the price of a pack jumps on New Year's Day. The first tobacco price hike in a decade sees prices rise by around $1.80. That brings the average cost of a pack of cigarettes to over $4. And it doesn't stop there either. Smoking is now completely banned in all restaurants nationwide. People caught lighting up in prohibited zones could be slapped with a fine of up to $90. These measures were unveiled by the government in September in an attempt to reduce the country's high smoking rate. There are more changes too. From the start of the new year, families facing severe financial hardships will receive more help from the government as it expands the scope of people who can apply for welfare benefits. This includes a stronger safety net for destitute families. The changes were proposed after a mother and her 2 daughters committed suicide in February because of financial troubles. Korea has also upped efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions. The government is making local companies follow a trading scheme, which requires businesses to reduce emissions or buy credits if they have difficulty meeting the targets. They'll be subject to emission restrictions from 2015 through 2017. The aggregate emissions quota for more than 500 businesses has been set at nearly 1.6 billion tons over the next 3 years. And from January 1st, tourists will be able to make use of a clearer and more convenient standard to help them select a suitable hotel. The Tourism Ministry has adopted the internationally recognized 5-star rating system. The move comes as Korea aims to better inform the 14 million foreign tourists that visit the country each year. Since 1999, hotel ratings in Korea have been voluntary and self-determined, garnering criticism and consumer complaints for being inconsistent and often inflated. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Shifting back to the coming of 2015, Koreans stayed up late into the night to say hello to the new year, and many didn't rest until they saw their first sunrise. Friends and families flocked to key spots around the nation to make wishes at dawn for a prosperous 2015. They did so despite sub-zero temperatures, which plummeted to as low as -10 degrees in some parts of the country. Here in the capital city, the Seoul Tower was the popular hotspot to cheer on the rising sun. But the first piece of Korean land to see the sunrise this morning was Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo. And people aren't the only ones happy to see the new year. Sheep will have plenty to celebrate in the coming months, as 2015 is their year on the zodiac calendar. Our Son Jung-in reports on how some local sheep are getting ready to relish their moment in the sun.
The sheep at this zoo have gone all out, dressed up in cute rainbow-striped clothes. Wearing embroidered hairbands and even pink blush on their cheeks, they're ready to meet the visitors who came to see them to mark the year of the sheep. They move through the fence at the sound of the bell. Some kids get scared and walk backward out of fear, while others can't take their hands off of the plump wool.
The sheep feels very soft and nice. I have clothes made of wool, but it feels a lot different touching it with my own hands.
The animal is recognized as a source of kindness, humility, and respect for parents, as seen from a young sheep that kneels down for their mother's milk.
Sheep are very smart. They can recognize their names and their keeper's voice. I feel proud when they hear me calling them and follow me.
It's hoped that the year of the sheep will be calmer than 2014 and bring peaceful and compassionate time like the spirit the animal symbolizes. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
The new year is a time of high hopes and good cheer, and people from all over the world gathered with that spirit in mind to ring in the start of 2015. In Brazil, an estimated 2 million people converged on Copacabana Beach for a 16-minute-long fireworks show. They weren't just celebrating the new year, but also the official opening of Rio de Janeiro's 450th birthday. Tens of thousands braved the cold in London for a display of pyrotechnics on the River Thames, with Big Ben chiming in the new year with his unmistakable sound. And in New York's Times Square, arguably the mother of New Year's celebrations, about 1 million people gathered to watch the ball drop, as they've done nearly every year since 1907. Moving to the search and recovery efforts for AirAsia Flight 8501 that crashed on Sunday off the coast of Borneo. Despite poor weather conditions throughout most of the day, 2 more bodies were pulled from the Java Sea this Thursday, pushing the total number recovered in the disaster so far to 9. Indonesian authorities had hoped that divers would be able to investigate what they believe is the fuselage of the jetliner, just about 30 to 50 meters below the surface of the Java Sea. But rough seas have kept them largely out of the water. When they finally make it down to the seabed, they're hoping to not only locate the main body of the plane, but also its black box recorders, which could provide clues as to what brought the plane down with 162 people on board. And leaving you with a brief look at the weather here in Korea. We've started off 2015 on a cold note, and that will continue overnight into the second day of the year as well. The low will dip to -10 later on, with a slight chance of snow in the capital and other regions early Friday morning. For our viewers overseas, let's take a look at the weather conditions in your part of the world. And that's all for now. Happy New Year, wherever you may be. For more of the latest stories out of Korea, you can check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news. Thanks for watching.